Are you familiar with the Irish Simpsons fans, the Ireland Simpsons
Yeah,
fans
I love
meme
their
group?
account. I love their stuff. I
Because
don't get it half the time, but when I do, I love it. I think I follow them.
I think that they are currently the best Simpsons meme producers online. And yeah, most of it is stuff about like, Brexit or Irish stuff. But by the way, we should look them up when we go to Ireland.
Absolutely. Lift a pint.
What's interesting to me, Bill, is that I've talked to fans of this show, and a lot of our fans are very young. They're Generation Z, and they say, I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons, and I can't help but think, well, is your cultural touchstone different? Because are you talking about, oh yeah, I love the season 20 episode where they go to Atlantic City, but no, they love just those episodes from the 1990s, and they say, oh yeah, they just still play just those episodes in syndication.
I think that might be a function of those ones being so online, like that. Those are the elements. They're the fodder for all these memes and stuff. So you want to generate a. I'll tell you for my experience is my experience with having kids these days is that kids do not know The Simpsons very well, and I'll tell you why that is, because Fox shot themselves in the foot by not putting it on Netflix. Like this is like my kids and all their friends know every episode of Bob's Burgers. They've seen them all 20 times. Every episode of Futurama, they've seen it all 20 times because they were on Netflix, and they would just be on in the background playing and playing and playing. Whereas to see Simpsons online, you have to go to Fox's FX world. You got to log in with your cable provider's thing, and you got to watch 2 minutes of commercials at every act break that you can't
And
skip.
they're edited.
Yeah,
Well, TV
is it edited?
anyway.
I think they have the ones.
But the ones on
Fox,
TV,
on
the
FX
ones on
World.
FX.
In any case, that is, I think, prevented a large number of people under the age of 12 from becoming as familiar with the show as they might be. And what I'm thinking, Virgil, when you said that, is that maybe they know it from YouTube.
Mm-hmm. I do just have a few more questions here, unless you want
for
to
it.
jump in with something. I have to ask you this, because we did have Mike Reese on, and we asked him it too. What can you tell us about John Swartzwelder?
I'm sure Mike covered it probably better than I could. I mean, John Swartzwelder was a very talented, very unusual man. Like you can't like. Well, I'll just say the basics to begin with. When we were working there, he was still back in the room every day. Must have been probably about 50. He's tall. He was a little overweight, but pretty about the same size as me. He smoked constantly. He always wore a short sleeve shirt that was like kind of a Western shirt with two pockets in the front, and each pocket had a package of unfiltered Camels in them. He would smoke. This is when you could smoke in the room. Like back in the 90s, you could smoke in the office. It was totally normal. Everybody was smoking. And he had an ashtray and would smoke all day long. He's a very unusual guy in that he didn't really work on any other TV shows. He worked on SNL briefly. He wrote a couple of other scripts, but I think his humor was a little too crazy for almost everybody except for Sam Simon, I guess, who hired him probably on the recommendation of some other guys like maybe George Meyer. And he also was just a very unusual guy. Like he never went to the movies unless it was a Stanley Kubrick movie. So he'd only go once to the movies once every 7 or 9 years. He didn't believe in exercise, except that you should just run down the block as fast as you could once every week or so. He didn't. He had a huge collection of historical memorabilia, and I think this is probably why he was probably able to retire. Like he would invest in things from auctions. I know he had a couple. Most notably, I know he had a couple of paintings by Adolf Hitler from when Hitler was an artist. And I also know he had thousands and thousands of old newspapers from the 17 and 1800s. I know that he also, because he wasn't the kind of guy who he didn't spend much money at all, and so he, I believe, got pretty rich based on his writing 52 episodes of The Simpsons and with all the accompanying residuals. And he bought, I think it was not Roy Rogers' old house, but Gene Autry's old house, and moved into it with all of his old newspapers and stuff. And his brother, who I heard had been injured building and been on disability for a number of years because he was injured building the Alaska pipeline in the 70s. And so they lived together. And I don't know anything about that. Like, I haven't seen him since we worked on The Simpsons together. I know he writes all those books that are hilarious, and he does promote them on Twitter from time to time. I'm not totally sure that's really him,
Yeah,
but it might be. And I think that just about covers it for John Swartzwelder. He was always a really nice guy.
What was his favorite Stanley Kubrick film? Do you know?
I don't know. I think he was moderately disappointed. The only one that came out during the time that I knew him was Full Metal Jacket, and I believe he was moderately disappointed by that.
That's a shame.
What was he like in a writer's room? I mean, did he do, sit and do punch-ups and things like that?
He was pretty like, it's interesting because there's some guys who never shut up in the writer's room, like Conan, for instance, was in the writer's room, and Conan is always on, and like he's always really fun. Not to criticize him, because you got to have some guys like that in the writer's room, or it just kind of drifts into oblivion. He was one of those guys who was quiet until he had a great line. So he would sit there and smoke, and then maybe he would speak once every 8 or 10 minutes, but it would always be the line that went in.
I read that he wrote the script to Homie the Clown, and that pretty much aired with virtually no, punch-ups or line changes.
It's pretty close. He didn't really like. I wouldn't say that the room was his forte. It's the first drafts that were his forte.
Yeah.
Like he wrote his first, like, and I think he preferred to be at home too, especially after they banned smoking. Like that was a huge issue. Like it was like around '93 that they banned smoking in workplaces, and for a brief period they tried to get him those ashtrays that suck, the smokeless ashtrays, and that worked for about a day and a half, and then David Merkin, who just really couldn't stand the smoke, was like, you should just write scripts from home. So he wrote a lot of great scripts during that time. And the thing about Swartzwelder is, like, he's going to give you a script with 90 hilarious jokes that no one else could have come up with. It's just that you have to provide him with the superstructure that handles the emotions and the character development, because that's not his. That's
the
not
female
his forte.
character.
Like that would be John Vidi's forte, for example.
Yeah.
And Swartzwelder, like, so when we were running the show, we would try to give Swartzwelder scripts that already had that built in, or ones that didn't need it, like the Prohibition one, where we were just like, screw it, there's not going to be any character development, it's not going to be realistic at all.
Oh God, that is
fun.
one of my
Have
all-time
fun with-
favorites, by the way. That's one really
Yeah, and
stands
that
out
was-
in my head.
That was another one that was probably, I don't know, 70% his first draft.
Maybe there's something to Schwarzwelder's a total rejection of modernity in his personal life that made him such a uniquely good writer.
I think, like, he really, if you wanted old-time style jokes, he could really deliver them. And like, he did you guys ever seen Pistol Pete? That was the pilot he did.
Yes, that's very
Yeah.
good.
Very funny and completely uncommercial. He also wrote another one, which I loved. That, God, it really makes me mad, because so many great pilots were written during those days, like by George Meyer and Swartzwelder, that just 20th just like threw right in the trash. And he wrote this great one about two little kids, and one of them was named Augie, and it was just kind of it was a real nostalgic kind of American, comedy show about two misbehaving kids, but like, it was hysterical. And it was another thing that was just obviously like went way over the heads of those executives, and they completely ignored it.
Bill, I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to ask you a handful of questions, more, King Solomon stuff for us.
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. In episode 3F03, Lisa the vegetarian, Ralph, when told to go to sleep, says, "Oh boy, sleep, that's where I'm a Viking." This line can be interpreted in two distinct ways. Ralph could be saying he's literally a Viking in his dreams, or Viking here could be figurative, meaning something like virtuoso. Which is correct?
Okay. I want to say I didn't write that line. I wasn't even in the room for that episode. It was a David Merkin episode. But based on my knowledge of The Simpsons, I think the first one is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Once again, vindicated.
Well, it sounds like we've got to talk to David Merkin. All right. In episode 3F23, You Only Move Twice, Hank Scorpio throws out his shoes and asks Homer, "Ever see a guy say goodbye to a shoe?"
I know where this one's going.
To which Homer replies, "Yes, once." Is Homer referring to what Scorpio just did, or to a prior shoe-throwing incident?
Okay. I've answered this online a number of times, but I'm happy to do it for you guys because I can be super clear. It is disputed, because the answer is that that was not in the script. A huge amount of the interaction between Scorpio and Homer was improvised by Albert Brooks and Dan Castellaneta. That line was not in the script. It was improvised, and Josh was directing them. And here's what happened. Josh and I always thought it was referring to a previous incident. However, Dan Castellaneta, who made up the line, says he was referring to what Scorpio did right then. So there you go.
Wow.
Wow. You heard
There's
it
no
here
clear
first.
answer. It's because the two sources, the showrunners and the person who made up the line, disagree. And I think, given that Dan made up the line, you're going to have to, it leans toward him.
My last one, and this is one I just figured out from my conversations with Matt.
Yeah, when Virgil pointed this out, it broke my brain a little bit.
So in the 4 golden era episodes that are flashback episodes that show the evolution of the family, it's pretty clear that, based on the ages of the characters, Homer and Marge met when they were 18, when they were seniors in high school or thereabouts. In the present day of the show, they're 35. Bart is 10, meaning that Marge had Bart when she's around 25, and that's when they get married. A big part of Marge's character is that she's had these kind of unfulfilled ambitions, you know? It's the sort of implication that, like, if this were more rooted in reality, they would have, like, had the kid when she's 18, right?
Right.
They would have gotten married
then. It's because she didn't go to college, and she married Homer because she got knocked up.
Right. So there's just this whole 7-year courtship.
Yeah.
That, and I realize that these are the sort of things that were mostly determined before your time, maybe even before they even the episodes even began to air. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that. Have you ever felt that was a gap or just a conflict?
Wait a minute. I don't remember this. Was Marge pregnant when they got married or not?
Yes, but when she was 25.
But I mean, only if you assume that they're 35, and I think it was said several times that they're 35, then instead of them getting together in high school and getting knocked up shortly after that, they spend 5 or 6 years together,
maybe 7,
where she's not pregnant, but presumably she doesn't have a job or go to college, and Homer has an unspecified job.
Right.
What were they doing?
She's still
Guys,
living at
I have
home.
never thought about that until this very minute. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I do know what you're talking about, but I can't believe that wasn't covered in some later
This is
episode.
like the fact that they never covered Jesus Christ's like adolescence in the Bible. Like,
yes,
all those like
that's
lost
exactly what it
years.
is.
Yeah.
It honestly just comes down to the fact that Homer shouldn't be 35. He should be in his late 20s. Problem is, that just doesn't scan
Right.
for a guy who looks like him.
They do actually, and I found this out totally by happenstance. They do actually cover it in a later episode, the one where they retcon it and Homer becomes a grunge musician.
Oh wow. Okay.
We've discovered an error in The Simpsons.
no
Virgil's
canon.
so happy right now.
No canon. No canon.
Also, yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like those, I just say that those guys are doing yeoman's work in trying to craft this era where Homer was born in 1985 or whatever. Now, like
Jesus Christ.
when we were writing Homer, he was written like our parents, and our parents had been born in the 1930s, and so like he was like sitting. The prototypical Homer moment for me is like Homer sitting alone in the car going, do 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 do, singing Little Spanish Flea to himself, which is something that only our parents would have done. And like my dad is 90 years old now, so like I think we were really writing Homer as someone who really should be in his 80s or 90s now.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for the next flashback episode that shows how Marge rose up through the ranks of the DSA, and Homer is a famous Twitch streamer.
Perfect.
I think that about does
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for talking to us, Bill.
Bill Oakley,
Guys, it's my pleasure.
thank you for enlightening us on fast food and also for helping to create probably the all-time greatest television show ever.
Yeah. Way to go on that.
Good
Thank you.
work.
Kudos.
Good work.
Kudos,
sir.
Bill.
Thank you. Well, you guys all know, and I'm sure your listeners know where to find me on Twitter and on Instagram if they like fast food reviews at that Bill Oakley.
At that Bill Oakley. Not this Bill Oakley, but that Bill Oakley.
We
Correct.
will include links in the show description. Once again, Bill, thank you so much for talking to us.
Till next time.
It's my pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
4.